And if you're an adult, you stay in here. So, welcome to the Acton Vacation Bible School and the auditorium class. It's great to have all of you with us tonight. We got lots and lots and lots of course, Acton people, but also people from the community and people I've known for many years. In fact, we got some people here tonight. I'm not going to name any names, but some people I've known for as long as I've been in Corinth and have been in my classes way back when I was at West Corinth. And so I'm just expecting lots of good participation tonight because this is Vacation Bible School. And so I suppose I could spend the next 50 minutes lecturing you about love, and joy, and we might get to peace. I don't know. I could do that, but that wouldn't be very much of a vacation Bible school, would it? All right, so I am expecting some class participation tonight. This is going to be a discussion-based class, which all of my classes are discussion-based, whether it's VBS or not, just because I feel like we learn a lot better when we're able to discuss and learn from one another and have comments. And so I will say some things, but I really need all of you to comment. I need good comments tonight, so please speak up as we talk about the fruit of the Spirit tonight. So I'm going to just do this very simply as far as just my approach to this class. We're going to go through the fruit of the Spirit. We'll start out just by reading Galatians 5:16 through 26, just to get our mind on the context there. And then we're going to go through the fruit of the Spirit one by one, starting tonight, and then the next 3 nights as well. And what we will do is we'll just go, fruit of the Spirit by fruit of the Spirit all the way through. And I have 3 passages picked out for each one. And of course, there are way more passages for each of these. But I have 3 that are really important passages for each one. And we'll go to each one and just kind of discuss each one together. And then I have just some repeating discussion questions about each of the fruit of the Spirit that we'll go through as well. And then that's just what we're going to do. So it's going to be very much a discussion-based type thing. So let's start out Galatians chapter 5, starting in verse 16. I'll read that for us, and that'll give us some context of what we're talking about here. Of course, this is very well-loved and very well-known passage. Paul says, "So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. The acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking and envying each other." All right, so Paul gives these 2 lists. You have the works of the flesh, and there's a long list of all of these sinful desires, of course, that we have. And then he gives the list, of course, of the fruit of the Spirit. And he says if we walk by the Spirit, then we're not going to do just whatever we want to do. Whatever desire we have, whatever desire our flesh has, we're not just going to do whatever we want to do. But the Spirit of God, as we are keeping in step with the Spirit, that the Spirit will bring out these characteristics in our lives. So let's go through these. Of course, the first one is love. And we are going to go through some important passages on love, but we, of course, for those of you who were with us for our homecoming, Chuck Norris, it's Steve Norris. Steve Norris was with us. Steve is a good friend of mine. He's a preacher at the Robinson Center Church of Christ in Conway, Arkansas, and he was with us for our homecoming, and he did 3 lessons, and he talked about love for all 3 of them. And so for those of you who are there for that, I feel like Steve has kind of already covered this one for us. But we can't talk too much about love, can we? And so we're going to go through some more. And we'll start out with the chapter of love, right? 1 Corinthians 13. So turn there in your Bibles. We'll start with that one, and that will be our first text to discuss together. Now, what I want us to do with this is I know that this passage is, it's famous for being the love chapter, right? And used in many a wedding ceremony, right? In fact, I'm pretty sure it was my dad probably referenced it in Abigail and I's wedding ceremony, and I know Abigail's dad did a devotional on it, like for our rehearsal dinner. But 1 Corinthians 13 has a context. It's included in a letter sent to the church at Corinth, where there was a great deal of division and lots of issues going on in the church there. And one of the issues that they were facing was division in regards to spiritual gifts. And Paul tells them they need to get their priorities straight, that they need to be seeking something that's more important than these spiritual gifts, and that is love. That love is something that they can unify around. So I am going to read this passage, and we read this passage a lot, of course, with love. But this passage, Paul isn't just sitting down and saying, well, let me just write this beautiful chapter on love. He has a purpose for why he wants them to pursue love. He wants them to pursue unity together as they're having these issues around spiritual gifts. And he says, you can unify around loving one another because that's what's truly important. And so as we discuss this chapter, I want us to keep that context in mind. Paul says this, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Of course, he goes on from there and he talks more about spiritual gifts and says that love is something that is truly going to last. It's going to be the thing that is more important than those spiritual gifts. So let's start out with this discussion question, and that is, what do we learn about love from this passage? And we're going to do this for each of the passages, right? So you can kind of see the pattern that we're going to go through in this class. What do we learn about love from 1 Corinthians 13, keeping in mind the context? This isn't just he's not just writing this chapter to write something beautiful about love, right? He's calling this church that is facing all of these issues to unify around something that's more important. So what do we learn about love from this passage? It is this central thing that we can unify around. It is this. It's a very important characteristic that we need to be pursuing. Right, it's the first of the fruit of the Spirit. This characteristic that the Spirit is bringing out in our lives. Right, as we keep in step with Him. And you're right that it is this central thing. It's mentioned probably more so than any of the other fruit of the Spirit. I didn't check that, but I'm guessing it's probably the one that's mentioned the most frequently throughout Scripture. So definitely a very important concept. All right. What do we learn about love from 1 Corinthians 13? Yes. Yeah. We think of love kind of as almost like a Disney sense of love, where it's this feeling, this warm, fuzzy feeling that we have. But that's not the type of love that Paul is describing here. Again, it has a context in the letter of 1 Corinthians, but also in the church at Corinth, where they're having all of these issues. They're dividing over spiritual gifts. And I'm sure there are a lot of times where they came to worship and did not have warm, fuzzy feelings about one another. But Paul is still calling them to unify. He's still calling them to love and pursue something that is more important than these other things these secondary things that are dividing them. And so he describes love in this beautiful way, all of these things that love does, that love is. And so it's so much more than just this warm, fuzzy feeling that we might have, that might come or go. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yes, it gets to the heart of the motivation behind why we do what we do. I think we could substitute a lot of other things. He's talking specifically about some spiritual gifts. He mentions prophecy and having faith and all of these different things. But if we come to church every Sunday morning and Sunday night and Wednesday night and every Bible class, but we're not loving people, what good was that, right? If we read through the Bible every single year, but we don't love people, what good is that? Right? So it gets to the core motivation behind why we do what we do. Really good comment. Any other thoughts? What do we learn about love in this chapter?
I'm always drawn to the strong word of always.
Mm.
Kind of, you feel like it, or every once in a while, it's always protects, always
Mm.
helps, always hopes. And that's a strong word. So
It
I'm
is.
always drawn to that. Like there's never a time that it's not.
Yeah, it's consistent, right? And that kind of goes back to it's more than just a feeling. Feelings come and go, right? There's lots of times when we might butt heads, and there's times when we aren't getting along, where maybe we don't have that warm fuzzy feeling toward one another. But love always does these things, whether that feeling is there or not. Right? It's consistent. So yes, that's a really important word to pull out in this text.
That's the key. It's in this text. Love is lasting, whereas all of those other things are not going to.
Yes.
And they're fighting over things that are temporary and just trying to go a better way.
Yes.
And love is that glue that everything else is held together by.
Yeah. They're fighting over these temporary spiritual gifts. And Paul's saying, y'all, get your priorities straight. Think about things that are going to be eternal. Think about things that are going to last. Love is what's going to last, not these spiritual gifts that you're dividing over. Yeah. Any other thoughts? What do we learn about love from this text?
John, I was talking to our youth minister a few months ago, and we were talking about you're not going to always connect, like as a minister, as a youth minister, as a church member, you're not going to always connect with everybody like with likes and interests. And maybe I'm a really good teacher, and the kids don't like my thesis, or maybe I'm a good preacher.
Yeah.
But they're always going to understand that you love them and that you care for them and that you show up for them. And I think that's what this is saying. Like just because you can get up in front of people and talk and teach Bible class and speak and be a leader, if you don't have love and you don't show that love to people, then it's not gonna you're not gonna connect with them. You're not
Yeah.
gonna. That's how I always see it. From that standpoint, like the first couple verses is okay. You're good at this stuff, but you
Yeah.
love people.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. Those first 4.
Yeah. People that, of course, there's the saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So, yeah, I can get up and preach a sermon or a Bible class, or, you can be involved in church and do lots of great things. But if you don't actually love the people that you're working with, whether that be, however you're serving, if you don't actually love the people that you're working with, nobody cares how much you know if you don't actually care about them. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one? We probably do need to move on if we're going to get through love. We could probably spend all night talking about 1 Corinthians 13. In fact, I know we could. Let's move on here. So let's go to John 13, 34 through 35. John 13, 34 and 35. Jesus says, "A new command I give to you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." So Jesus is speaking to his disciples here, of course, and he tells them he has a new command for them. And we might look at that and say, well, how is that new? They've always supposed to love it's always been the command to love one another. But there is a new aspect to this command. Going back to Leviticus 19 and verse 18, The standard is love your neighbor as who? Yourself, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, here, Jesus is kind of building off of that, but he says, love one another not as you love yourself, but as I have loved you. So you must love one another. Steve, who was with us this past Sunday, he talked about this passage, and he talked about how the new thing is he's shown them how to love. And that's connecting back to the previous standard is love as you love yourself, but now he's saying love as I have shown you what love is. And we'll see that more as we get into 1 John as well, that Jesus and his example of love is the standard that we are to follow. All right, so same question. What do we learn about love from this passage?
Some people are not very lovable, and Jesus died for those people, just the ones that loved him.
Yes.
We have to love those people that aren't necessarily lovable,
Yeah.
and they may not even want to be loved. We still have to love them anyway.
Yes, that is an outstanding comment, Roger, that there are some people that we're going to interact with that aren't very lovable, that maybe they have some very serious character flaws and have done some very bad things, but Jesus still loves them and died for them. Now, that doesn't mean that there's, of course, are not going to be consequences for their actions, and there's judgment and all of that, right? We're not trying to skip over any of that. But we're talking about the fruit of the Spirit. Fruit of the Spirit's love. And so if we're thinking about love, whether or not somebody chooses the right way in life, Jesus still loves them and died for them to give them the opportunity to repent of that and to follow him. And if he loves them in that way, then we have to love them as well. Whether or not we have that warm, fuzzy feeling for them, we still have to love them through our actions. Any other thoughts? What do we learn about love from this text?
I don't think that we can fully comprehend love the way Jesus says as he has loved us.
Yeah.
I don't think as humans that we can comprehend.
Yeah, certainly it's, every year that I follow Jesus, I learn more about it. And I think every year I'm going to learn more. I'm never going to reach the end. And so I think that's why Steve was talking about heaven is the reward, not the motivation. We want to be in heaven to be with Jesus, right? To be with God, to be in his presence, to not be separated from him. And heaven's a great reward for that. But we're looking forward to being with him, to serve him. That's an end in and of itself. And part of that is we can't even begin to grasp the depth of his love for us. And so if that's the standard that we're to imitate, that we're to follow, then we're not going to reach that fully on this side of heaven, certainly not. But it is something for which we are striving. Any other thoughts? What do we learn about love from this text? It's a really important one. In verse 35, nobody's mentioned. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. What should we learn from that? Say it. I'm not going to come read it.
Matthew 5:44 says, it's talking about love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you.
Yeah. Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, right, tells us that we're supposed to love our enemies. And the context there is they had kind of made this law that wasn't there, right? He says, you have heard it said, love your neighbor, but hate your enemies. Well, if you do a little bit of looking for the passage that says, hate your enemies, it's not there, right? And so Jesus goes back and says, no, that's not what God intended all along, is, love your neighbor means love your neighbor, and that's everybody, right? Even those that, going back to Roger's comment, might not be very lovable, those that might, be mean to you or persecute you, you still love them. And back to what Jesus says here, by this, They will know you are my disciples. Who does that, right? It's easy to love the people who love us, the people who are lovable. And Jesus says that as well, right? He talks about, even the Gentiles do that. Everybody loves the people who love them, right? That's not the standard. You're not going to stand out as different if you just love the people who love you, right? You're going to stand out as different if you love the people that aren't so lovable, the people who don't love you in return. And by that, people will know you are my disciples, he says. Any other thoughts on this one? What do we learn about love from this passage? All right, what I'm going to do is, I have another text up there, but I don't think we have time to go through 1 John 4. So I'm going to skip forward here a little bit just because I want to get through at least 2 of these before the kids come back in here. And they're supposed to come back in here at 8:10 is what Johnson said. And we still need to get to joy, right, to get through at least 2. So, but I do have kind of some discussion questions that I want us to go through for each of the fruit of the Spirit. I think there's 3 of these. So the first one is, how is the biblical value of love similar or different from the way our culture views it? So what are the similarities and differences between a biblical view of love and the way our culture views love?
I love my kids, but that means that I have to direct them away from things. Like a lot of times, I think as a teacher, they're like, "Oh, you have to love these kids, and everything that they do and everything they say
Yeah,
is okay." And that's not, in my opinion, Christian-wise, that's not love. So
yeah, yeah,
I think that's where it's a different biblical view is love is, we should love them, but we should also be willing to step in and like my friends, I love them, but if they're not doing things correctly, I'm going to step in and say,
yeah,
hey, this isn't the way you should be doing things. Whereas I think a cultural view of love is just love.
yeah, yeah.
Let them be them.
Yeah, I'm going to build on that just a little bit here, and I would say that the cultural view of love is affirmation, right? Is you must approve of everything in my life, everything that I choose to do, right? But a biblical view of love is not that at all, right? A biblical view of love is showing a better way, right? Showing the truth, not in a hurtful way or being mean about it or anything like that, but doing so in a nice way, certainly, but still showing the truth when somebody needs to go in a better direction. And so certainly those 2 things are opposites of each other. The culture is, you love me, you got to affirm everything about my life. But the biblical view is not that at all. You speak the truth, and you do it in love, but you still speak the truth, right? Yeah. Any other thoughts? What is the difference between a cultural view of love and a biblical view? Yeah. No. Mm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. No. Yeah. I think that's outstanding, Chad. It reminds me of in Hebrews, right? The Hebrews writer talks about God disciplines those he loves, right? God's discipline is what we need. It might not be what we want in the moment, but it's what we need, right? Just like a father, right, might discipline a child, and I'm sure the child doesn't like that discipline in that moment, but it's what's needed, not what's wanted. And certainly that is very much opposite of a cultural view of love. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one? All right, I'm going to go on just for time's sake here. I'm sure there's a lot more that we could add to that. But where do you see this fruit in your life? Again, this is kind of going to be a repeating question where we're going to see this for each of the fruit. Where do you see the fruit of love in your life? In other words, where is the Spirit, as you're keeping in step with the Spirit, where is the Spirit bringing this out in your life? Don't overthink this. You can give me simple examples. That's fine. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Keeping your promises to your spouse, to your children, or to whoever else, right? Even when perhaps at times that's difficult, but keeping your word to them, certainly. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Where do you see this fruit in your life? Where is the Spirit bringing it out? Sharing Jesus with others, as we do on a regular basis, right, in the jail and prison ministry. I was thinking about that. You were talking about, Roger, with, some people may not be lovable. We run into, I would say the vast majority of people we run into in the jail are, very, very kind and very respectful to us. There's some people that might be a little bit difficult to love, right? But we're called to go and share the gospel with them, and we do that out of love. And that is, as we're keeping in step with the Spirit, that's the Spirit bringing that fruit out in our lives, certainly. Any others? Where do you see this fruit in your life? Being a peacekeeper, certainly. I'm sure that could be in many different contexts, maybe family members, friends, coworkers, being somebody who seeks peace. And of course, peace is another one of the fruit of the Spirit that we'll talk about here in a little bit, but we do that out of love, right? Love for those involved. All right, let me go to, I wanted to try to wrap up the first one by 7:45, and at 7:46, so I got two more questions here, so I need to go through these. In what situations is this fruit hardest for you to live out? So we have, where do you see it in your life, but then where is it perhaps a little bit more difficult for us to have this? Where do we still need to work, in other words? You did, Michael, yes. But you're good at breaking uncomfortable silence. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yes. Does anybody have anybody in your life that's a little bit difficult? Anyone have those people in your life? I think we all do, right? And they might be trying at times, those people. It might be hard from time to time to love those people. But again, Jesus says, everybody loves those who love them back, right? That's not being different, right? We're called to a higher standard. We're called to be different from the world. And even the world loves those who love them, right? We're called to love the people that are difficult to love. So if there's somebody in your life that perhaps pushes all of your buttons or is very rude to you or whatever situation it might be, somebody that's difficult to love in your life, yeah, it might be hard to live this out, but that's still what we are called to as Christians. Any other thoughts? Michael, you came in here, you're a good commenter. Where is it hard for us to live out the fruit of the Spirit, specifically love is what we're talking about right now? Where is it most difficult for us to live that out? Mm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
being bitter about things that they went through in their life, you know, it might help to have a compassion
Mm.
for people instead of just seeing that you did them wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Abigail shared something with me a while back that I think she learned in grad school for counseling is when you're dealing with somebody that's difficult, is trying to, or asking the question, what makes it make sense? Because a lot of times people do things that from our perspective make no sense, right? But people generally don't do things that from their perspective make no sense. There is something in their life that even, it might be totally irrational, but something in their life that from their perspective makes it make sense. And so looking at what makes it make sense? Why are they treating me this way? Why are they not reciprocating the love that I'm showing them? And that might not take away the difficulty. I'm sure it's still going to be hard. But trying to see things from their perspective might help when it's difficult to love somebody.
And also really considering where we are in relation to God
Mm.
and how unlovable we can be ourselves sometimes too.
Yeah.
That might make it a little bit easier too. And I think that's something we need to reflect on too. It makes you more
Yeah.
thankful for what He's done.
Yes, we are not always lovable either, right? We are not always lovable either. Certainly not from God's perspective. I was listening to a sermon the other day, and the preacher made a really good point about love that I think is appropriate to share. He was talking about how, and kind of going back to your comment, Abby, about, oftentimes, especially from a cultural perspective, we think of love as a feeling, but love is more action. And really the truth is that our feelings oftentimes will follow our actions, and this will go in both directions. And the illustration that this particular preacher gave was, it's been said that the Nazis killed the Jews because they hated them, but then they hated the Jews because they killed them. Right? They went through these atrocious actions so much that they numbed themselves to it and then started to hate even more as a result of the actions that they were going through. Right? And it works in the positive direction as well. Right? If you go through actions of love, even when that's difficult, right? And maybe you're even having to make yourself go through those loving actions, the feelings will catch up. The feelings will follow. Right? Any last thoughts on this question? I have one more for this. I might have to shorten this. I didn't realize how long it was going to take to go through all of this, but that's all right. We have some good discussion. How would a church known for love look and act? Again, this is going to be a repeating one. We're going to talk about this for each of the fruit of the Spirit. How would a church known for love look and act?
They're going to be there for each other.
Mm.
They're going to show their love. They're going to have action.
Yes.
Michael said not just say it, but showing.
We're going to show up through actions, love, actions of love toward one another, certainly, and also for our community, right? We're going to love those that are hurting in our community. Yeah. Any other thoughts? How would a church known for love look and act?
That church would also have to have, if this is real love, they would have to have joy. I know you weep with
Mm.
those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice, but there should be something different about it.
Yeah.
A deep, abiding, lasting joy regardless of the circumstances.
Yes. So the fruit of the Spirit will come together, right? We should have more than one, not just one of them. So joy is going to accompany that, right? So we should find joy in loving other people, right? That should be a source of joy for us. Have you ever walked into a church building and you could just tell right away, man, this place is special, right? There's just an energy about this place. There's a joy in these people. I can tell that they love one another. We need to be a church like that, a church where people walk in and they can just tell, man, this is a place where people love one another. This is a place where people have joy. This is a place where God's Spirit is working because these people are keeping in step with God's Spirit. All right, we need to move on to this next one because we only have 17 minutes. So let's talk about joy. Speaking of joy, Michael, let's talk about it. So let's go to John 15, 1 through 11. John 15, 1 through 11. As I was researching this, I was kept going back to John. Lots of passages in John were just really fitting for the fruit of the Spirit. So here Jesus says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. So, of course, the kind of the emphasis is verse 11 there, where he talks about his joy being in us, our joy being complete. But I've really felt like the context leading up to that was really important. So I wanted to include verses 1 through 11 as well. So he talks about, he's the true vine, his Father's the gardener. He talks about us bearing fruit. We can't bear fruit apart from him. And he says that he has told us this so that we can have his joy and our joy can be complete. So there's a connection. He talks about love as well, right? And the bearing fruit, of course, goes along with the fruit of the Spirit, right? So all of this kind of works together. But he says that he wants us to know all of this so that we can have complete joy. So what do we learn about joy from this text? Yeah. So joy, kind of like love, right? We think about love as sort of a warm, fuzzy feeling. Joy is kind of in a similar way. It transcends beyond the feeling of the moment, right? It's something that you can have even if you're not feeling that warm, fuzzy, happiness in the moment. Joy, like love, is something that can transcend beyond that, certainly. Any other thoughts? What do we learn about joy from John 15, 1 through 11? So he takes joy in us. We take joy in being connected with him, right? I think the connection with creation is really important here. God created us, right, to be in relationship with him. And so apart from him, can you really truly have the joy that he's created us for? Can you really have, as someone who's created by God, can you really truly have the joy that he created us for and be apart from him? Really, no, right? True joy comes from being connected to the vine, right? True joy comes from bearing fruit the way that we are made to. True joy comes from connection with our Creator. And apart from him, we can't really have the joy that he's created us for. Any other thoughts? What do we learn about joy from John 15? Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. 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 kind of reminds me of what he says about the Father pruning, right, so that we can be more fruitful. And that really kind of goes back to Chad's comment about the discipline, right? God giving us what we need, not necessarily what we want. And so if we really want to have the joy that he's created us for, then, yeah, we can't just be nominal. There's going to be some issues that arise in our lives. We're not really going to have the joy that we're seeking until we are fully connected with him. Let's move on from here, just because time's sake. We got 11 minutes. We got a couple of other passages to go to. Let's go to James 1, 2 through 4. James 1, 2 through 4. James says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing." And James has a very unique style where he will kind of, if you ever read through James and you're like, man, it seems like he's jumping around a lot. He'll kind of address one topic and then it seems like he goes over and does something else. He kind of does this sort of circular thing where he'll bring up a topic and he'll kind of address it from one angle, and then he'll move on to another topic and then another one, but then he'll come back to where he was before and he'll address it again, right? And one of the things that he addresses multiple times throughout the letter is when you're facing temptations or trials, how should you understand that? What is God doing in your life? How do you get through that? And so this is the first time that he addresses that, trials and perseverance. And he says that it should be a source of joy for us. So what can we learn from that? What can we learn about joy from this passage that tells us that we should find joy in trials? What should we learn from that? Mm. Yes. Our joy is not found in the circumstances that we are in any given moment. Our joy has a greater source. We find our joy certainly in what we are anticipating in the future. We find our joy in the fact that we know that God is teaching us something through that. He's bringing us into more complete faith, into learning perseverance and endurance. We find joy in being connected with God, certainly, going back to Michael's comment. And so that joy can transcend the moment. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
God created us with feelings too. And it's okay to cry.
Mm.
It's okay to
Yeah.
be angry at times and not like the situation necessarily you've been put in.
Mm.
But as you look forward to the development that comes through it, or how God can work in situations, it can bring a deeper joy. I guess we shouldn't feel guilty sometimes. We are human. We do experience emotions and things.
Yes.
Not everything brings us
Yeah.
happiness.
Yeah. That is a really good comment, Michael, that joy, we can still have joy and experience a whole range of emotions alongside of joy. Having joy doesn't necessarily mean that we're not also experiencing sadness, that we're not crying. I did a sort of a research thing. It wasn't really good research. It was just, I did a poll on Facebook. This was like when I was an undergrad, and I was like a freshman or a sophomore. And it was for an honors college project, and I had to do a presentation on it. And I did a poll where I asked people, how many times in your life have you seen your dad cry? And people commented, and there was a whole range of different numbers that people gave. But one of the most interesting things that I got from that was people would comment their number, how many times they'd seen their dad cry. But then they would comment when they had seen their dad cry. And it really struck me that, almost everyone and I got a lot of comments on it. Almost everyone seeing their father cry made such a big impact on them that they didn't just know the number, they knew the exact situations that they had seen their dad cry. And I can believe that because I have never once in my entire life seen my dad cry. My mom told me one time that she saw him cry once. It's the only time she's ever seen him cry was at his mom's funeral. And that was, I think it was just like a single tear that you could just barely notice. And it just really struck me that makes such a big impact on kids. And I mean, there were like specific categories. In fact, I took all of the comments and categorized them. And it was, I think the categories were some kind of a religious experience, the death of a loved one, some tragedy, or at a wedding, at a daughter's wedding, were kind of the three categories that were given. And I don't think I'm going to be like that. There was like one or two commenters that said like, man, I saw my dad cry all the time. Like, and I kind of think I'm going to be that dad. That's, if I'm ever a dad, I hope to be a dad. I think I'm going to be the dad that if anyone ever asks my kids, how many times do you see your dad cry? I think it's going to be a lot. They're going to see me cry plenty. And so joy can be experienced with a whole range of human emotions because God has made us such that we experience emotions. And I don't care how macho you think you are, you still experience emotions. You might be bottling it up and hiding it, but you still feel emotions. Joy can be experienced, a whole range of human emotions. We got 5 minutes left, and I do want to get to kind of our standard questions. The other passage was Philippians 4:4, which is the rejoice always passage. So let's get to how is the biblical value of joy similar or different from the way that our culture views it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've been teaching middle school class and we've been talking about joy, and the biblical view, I feel like, is you can supplement, like, joy can be there during times of joy can be there during times, whereas the world view is joy is only when you're happy, not
Yeah.
other things. And I've been trying to stress that to them, like, you gotta do that.
Yeah. I think we are being invaded, so we're going to end it there. But thanks for the great comments.